Tout le monde se tait. Bonsoir. Alors, je vous présente Gianluca Miniacci, qui est professeur à l'université de... On n'entend pas? English? Okay. Okay, can you hear me like this? So, Gianluca Miniacci is professor at Pisa University. And he has been working extensively on Middle Kingdom. That's why we know each other quite well. And I had the privilege to see the backstage of what he's going to present us. So, we'll listen to you now.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me well? Okay, today is a long journey, so be prepared, because we go through the whole discovery of Queen Ahhotep, the treasure of Queen Ahhotep, which has been discovered in Luxor in 1859. Basically, along the hills of Drabou el Naga, which is in Thebes, Auguste Mariette, in the mid of 19th century, discovered a rishi coffin covered with golden foil, containing an astonishing treasure made of objects in gold, in silver, bronze, precious wood, and precious stone. So it's quite an impressive treasure, especially for that time. And in Egyptological literature, the treasure has been linked to the figure of Auguste Mariette. In a way or in another, this was all connected, because during his second trip to Egypt, just 1 year and a half before, he discovered the coffin of the king Kamose, which is linked to Ahhotep, and in a way or another, also the opening of the museum in Tahrir is linked to the discovery of Queen Ahhotep. And in the few excavation reports, if we can call excavation reports, most of them made not by Mariette himself, but made by Ernest Desjardins, a friend and colleague of Auguste Mariette. We don't have many information. Mariette has been claimed as the one who discovered the treasure quite explicitly, because Desjardins wrote, Mariette had remarked a strip of earth with the fragments of stones and broken pottery. This doesn't give too much indication where the treasure could have been found. And that's thanks to the ability of Mariette to recognize where the ancient burial of Queen Ahhotep was, which was retrieved. Especially, it gives an important information on the 5th of February, 1859. Unluckily, we don't have many of the archival sources of Mariette. They probably went lost in a large flooding that happened in Bulak, so where he had also his residence and also part of the museum, in 1878. So there was a large flooding in Cairo, and all the area of Bulak was flooded, and presumably several manuscripts of Mariette went lost, so we don't have many information, much more than the report that I showed you before of Desjardins. And then in the only publication, originally was planned to have a whole Catalogue General, a whole volume of the Catalogue General just for the Queen Ahhotep treasure, written by von Bissing. And we're already given the numbers. There are in the Catalogue General, there are the numbers from 501 and 549. They are already allocated for Ahhotep treasure, but this never took shape. So this number has been cancelled. So if you go to Cairo now, these are crossed with a line. But he published a preliminary publication in 1900, so almost half century after the discovery of the burial, which is sort of preliminary. It's very short, it's not precise sometimes, although it had the magnificent drawings of Howard Carter. But it creates also a degree of confusion, because not all the objects of Ahhotep are listed inside the publication of von Bissing, and also in the same publication he assigned other objects to this group. For instance, there is the dagger that is now in the Royal Library of Belgium, or there is also an axe inscribed both with the names of Kamose that is in a Shmolean museum. They come from the antiquity market. So, but in that preliminary publication, they are assigned to Ahhotep. So at one point, there was a degree of confusion about this, about what exactly belonged to this discovery. In addition, the confusion increased over the time because in Egyptological tradition, especially one made by Maspero, the treasure has been sort of tear apart, has been split over different person, because actually after the discovery from Mariette, there is the Mudir of Kena, Fadil Pasha, who stole, according to Maspero, stole the coffin and all the treasure. He opened, so the coffin was open, and the mummy was destroyed, was ravaged in search of precious objects, and most of the original equipment went lost. And then after sometimes Mariette was able to recollect or regather all the pieces. Another part of the confusion is also that most of all of the objects, apart from the coffin itself that inscribes for the Queen Ahhotep, none of them bear the name of Ahhotep herself, but they bear the names of two other kings. King Kamose, which is the last king of the 17th dynasty, and King Ahmose II nowadays, that is the first king of 18th dynasty. However, the discovery of this treasure had a national resonance. In the end, thanks to this big discovery, Mariette convinced the Pasha of Egypt to open the first Egyptian museum in Egypt. He opened Bulaq Museum after 4 years from the discovery in 1863. And not only a national resonance, but also an international resonance, because the treasure was displayed as soon as it was found at the Académie des Inscriptions de Belles-Lettres à Paris. After that, Mariette brought to his city in Boulogne-sur-Mer. We don't know exactly, but probably for 1 year it was there on display. Maybe it was also restored there. Unfortunately, we don't have any trace of what happened to the treasure. Then in 1862 was at the International Exhibition in London. And even more, it had a bigger resonance because at that time the center of Europe was Paris and not London. In 1867, the treasure was displayed at Exposition Universelle in Paris, and this was a great success. And also thanks to the display of this treasure, there was a sort of key to open interest of Europe even more towards Egypt, so towards Egyptian archaeology. So in order to sum up, basically we have in February 1859, Mariette discovered the coffin of Queen Ahhotep. He provided, through Desjardins, only short archaeological reports with very few details that sometimes are meaningless. Then the treasure was kept in Egypt after probably some troubles, some being taken by Fadil Pasha. Then it was also in Paris. He had some problems, Mariette, to bring back the treasure to Egypt. That was kept in Egypt. In 1863 was opened the first public national museum in Egypt, and the treasure played a big role in this display. And then also it started to have an international resonance, at least till the discovery of Tutankhamun. It was used to illustrate books and catalogs of Egyptian art and history. So that's the shortest conference you ever seen. Well, this is not true. This is basically what I told you. Till now is the historiography of the 19th century. Basically, what I just described is the traditional Egyptology, where actually they needed for a hero. At one point, especially in the 19th century, the figure of a hero, Champollion or Mariette, it was quite significant. They need to gather the focus around a figure, a single figure, and Mariette has become the hero of the story. And also a little bit about Western superiority. This is not the problem of the century. The century worked in this way, but they need to sort of show the Western superiority of the knowledge over the local culture. For instance, the Mariette reports are the only one reliable, even if, as you have seen, are not reliable. And this prevent also, this type of history that we wrote, prevent also from searching sources elsewhere. And now we will see that there is some other sources. And then also there is a sort of ritual justification of intellectual appropriation of abandoned goods. Basically, this was abandoned goods. There is a need of care of these objects. They need to be restored, they need to be displayed, there is a musealization. What I'm trying to do now is basically rewriting the history. What this was the history of the 19th century. We need to write our own history. And I start from a concept of a philosopher, he's a German philosopher, Walter Benjamin. He spoke about the Jetztzeit, that is the now, the present. It's because he said that the past, we always imagine the past as something static. The past is there. We need just to read. While he said, no, the past is not there. We don't need to read the past. We need to create the past, because the past is created in the dialectic relation with the present. Every day we rewrite the past. So basically, every past is written in that moment. In this moment, we start to write another different type of past. So the past without the present doesn't exist. And basically, this is what we are trying to do, what I'm trying to do today, to solve also in a different approach the several unsolved questions since the discovery of the burial of Queen Ahhotep. One of the questions is, but we are really sure that Mariette discovered this treasure. Why there are no plans, no notes, even if most of them can be lost in the flooding of 1878, but why there is no mention in the Mariette notes, in the survived Mariette notes? Where exactly this burial has been found? As you have seen, the report of Desjardins was rather vague. It was a strip of earth in Thebes full of pottery and fragments. Anyone that has been in Thebes, you know that this is almost everywhere. And then still other questions, like what they intend with the burial of Ahhotep. If you read some publications, somebody speaks about the tomb, somebody speaks about a cachette, some other speaks about the reburial or shaft. What happened to the finds after their discovery? There were really objects lost, as Maspero reported, or they were or not, and to whom these objects originally belonged, who was Ahhotep. They were gathered from different people, or it was really the burial equipment of the queen. So this is a project led by, we started, now I give you also the background behind the scene, how this project started, because this project is led by University of Pisa. Is as a title, we gave a title that is Project of Queen Ahhotep Treasure, and the context is the long road to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo from 1550 BC till 1863 AD. And this is a project that started with discussion with Peter Lacovara, with the director of the Egyptian Museum, with Sabab Del Razik, and also found already a publication. The first part of this project has been already published. The whole project started basically in 2019, where thanks to a suggestion of Elisabeth David, I could not have access first to this manuscript, but also I could not have any idea where this was manuscript. But Elisabeth David, she told me that in the archive Maspero, not in the archive of Mariette, in the Bibliothèque de l'Institut de France, there were some administrative documents coming from the excavation of Gourna of Mariette. And then I started to be interested, because I was interested in the Ahhotep treasure. The reason why they are in Archive Maspero is because Maspero himself, he writes down this, that there are some papers that he collected from Mariette at his death in 1881, because the children of Mariette asked him to publish. So basically he gathered, there are a few papers, there are not so many, but amongst these few papers I found two lists, one in French and another in Arabic, that of the objects found inside the coffin before Mariette came into possession of them. So they are listed in, or they were listed, drafted in February 25th, 1859. I will discuss about this longly. Then soon after, also the diary, unpublished diary of Théodule de Verrières. He was with Mariette at the time he took the coffin, and then he drafted the first account of the discovery of this treasure. And then I decided 1 year later, in 2020, also fighting against the COVID. It was COVID time, and this is, I put a picture of the road we took. We rent a car from Pisa to go to Milan. There was no one in the street because there was COVID time. We had to take a flight, and then we arrived in the archive, in the database of Cairo Museum, and then we start to understand exactly what was left of this treasure. We checked the list of the Journal d'Entrée, we checked the list of the temporary registers, the annotation in the special register, in the Catalogue Général. We also discovered the original manuscript of von Bissing of the Catalogue Général that has never been published, which is not so different from what he published in 1900, so it's not super exciting. And also we checked the photo archives, where unfortunately till this moment we didn't find anything. But simply thanks to the Journal d'Entrée, which is really like a digging diary, we were able to finally have a clear idea of what there was in this coffin, what was found in this coffin, because there were 70 objects made of gold, silver, bronze, and other precious stones, which is rare and unparalleled in Egypt. And till Tutankhamun was the largest treasure ever discovered in Egypt. Now I just briefly summarize for you what was found inside. There were one mirror in bronze and gold, one wooden sticks wrapped with golden foil, one wooden fan, also wrapped in golden foil. There were 4 daggers in gold, bronze, and precious wood, 6 asses in gold or silver, bronze, wood, and other precious stones. I go quite quickly because this is not the topic of today. There are 23 between bracelet, armlets, 8 necklaces, 1 ring. Especially there is one of the necklace as a scarab in full gold. This is it's not covered by gold, but it's all gold. There was probably 1 large Yusek collar. I say probably because this is a reconstruction made in the 19th century by Mariette. There were scattered beads, I suppose. They found the 2 falcons ending, and they probably reconstruct a sort of Yusek collar. But some beads, as you can see in the picture on the bottom, they don't fit in these large Yusek collars, and they made some other bracelets. But this is a modern reconstruction. A pectoral and 1 box full of beads. There are 2 miniatures, both 2 miniature axes, and 2 lion paws, little paws, probably part of the gaming. And then there are 4 alabaster jars. From the list of the Journal d'Entrée, there are few pieces that we were not able to trace back, because there is 1 coal jar we didn't find, except for a fragment of the cover. There is 1 toilet box and 1 wooden headrest that unfortunately we didn't find, but we have an image of them, and you will see where I discovered this. And then we came back after the preliminary work in the database. In this started a study and photography of this object. We started also laboratory analysis with Aïd Merta. And you can see here, let me see if the video is okay. So we applied different laboratory technique. We started with X-ray, with UV light, with PXRF to see the composition of the material, and digital-like microscope to see the trace wear and use of the objects. So, and already just preliminary some information, Aïd discovered that there is already the Egyptian blue sometimes to imitate the lapislazuli. They used Egyptian blue, or for instance, through the X-ray, he noticed the technique for construction of the objects, or even in some of the bracelets, we noticed that there is some seeds in order that they should make music, make some make a music of for when they were worn. And then now we started what we are doing now. We started a database in order to collect all the information that we gathered from the different journal d'entrée, temporary register, from our measurements and all the rest. And we start also the drawings with the help of Paul Whelan. The next steps will be publication and inshallah redisplay of these objects, because now these objects are in the basement of the museum, so they are not on display. When Tutankhamun will be moved in the room P2, a corner of this room will be devoted to redisplay of these objects. So, but let's go to the open questions. I said that there are several open questions, and one of these is if really Mariette discovered this treasure and why there are no plans and notes. So the first assumption that is very well rooted in Egyptological tradition is that Mariette was one of the people, or was the one that discovered this coffin. But if we see in the archive, there is a letter of Monnier written to Mariette, and this clearly Mariette was in Cairo, was not in Luxor at the time of the discovery. So Mariette has nothing to do with the discovery of this coffin. Most probably, there were the men of Mariette working on the spot, the Ruasa of Mariette working in that spot. But Mariette was far away. When it was discovered, Monnier wrote this letter and he said, yesterday your group has discovered a magnificent mummy. And then he said, I also preserved for you. So basically, Mariette was not there at the moment of the discovery. While the sources that we found, we see that at least there were two supervisors of Mariette. There was Sheikh Awad. I wonder if it's the same sheikh that was already with Champollion and Rossellini in Thebes when they were there in first quarter of 19th century. And then we don't know who is this Ali. Ali, there was another Rais. Maybe it's Rabba Ali, because there is a list drafted by Vassalli in 1863. He listed different Rais of Mariette working in Gurna, in the West Bank, and amongst them there is Rais Rabba Ali. Probably it's the same. If you have any suggestion, I'm happy to gather information. So, but basically, the real finders of the treasure are invisible to our sources and even to our eyes, because they are the Egyptian workmen and foremen that in our historiography of the 19th century, they were replaced by the figure of the hero. We wanted the hero, we got Mariette. But actually Mariette has nothing to do. This is also the reason why we didn't find any sketch, any plan, any information about the discovery of this treasure in the archives of Mariette. And it's pointless to keep looking in that archives. We should find somewhere else. There were other people that were more or less to different degrees involved in the discovery. For instance, there was Joseph Bonnefoy that was inspector of Mariette in Luxor, but at that time we know that he was not in good health. Probably didn't create many reports, or maybe didn't supervise even any excavation. There was Charles Gabet, and only later Luigi Vassalli arrived in Luxor, but he gathered quite a lot of information from Mariette. Not by chance he was excavating in the same cemetery where Ahhotep was discovered. And then there are some local figures, Fadil Pasha, governor of Kenya, Bedawi Effendi. Probably in the Arabic sources or in the Turkish sources, we can find much more information about this discovery. And then even just to add some more complexity to the discovery of this treasure, there is also a different tradition, because Howard Carter, while working in Thebes, he heard a story from one of the people that there is this treasure was discovered by the illicit excavation of a man called Ahmed Saida el-Hag. And he gives so many details that probably was part of, that probably is not completely fake, this new. So still we don't have any idea if they were really the Rais of Mariette, they discovered this treasure, or there were someone else that discovered this treasure and then they sold to the Rais of Mariette. Basically, the only conclusion is that from our historiography, from our reconstruction, we largely omitted the Egyptian written sources, either the Arabics and the Turkish sources. The archives of the Khedival court and local governors are completely absent. So it's necessary that we start a more deep engagement between Egyptologists and historians of the 19th century Egypt to try to find some puzzle, some piece of the big puzzle. So the only things that we can know now that probably the figure of Mariette should be repositioned inside the history of the discovery of the treasure. A little bit less important, but still curious, is also the date of discovery, because all the sources, they claim that has been discovered on the February 5th of 1859. But already, if you look at the Inventaire de Bolac, which has been transcribed then in the Journal d'Entrée, you can see, you can't read, it's difficult to read, probably this is the writing of Mariette himself, that this has been discovered in January 1859. It's already a bit of discrepancy, but probably is because of the memory of Mariette. But then, thanks to a letter pointed out to me by Thomas Lebet, there is a letter of Mariette written on the 14th of February, 1859, while he is still in Luxor. So most probably the 5th of February is not happening. It's not the date where this treasure would have been discovered. Otherwise, Mariette will be immediately informed, especially if they were his men that discovered this treasure. And the only date that we are secure that this treasure was already discovered, it was in the letter of the archives that were in the Bibliothèque de l'Institut de France, where this is a sort of official letter, it's a copy of the official letter, where it's written that this list has been drafted by the 25th of February. It means that by the 25th of February, the coffin should have been already found and opened. So basically, probably the coffin was found between the 14th and the 25th of February, 1859. Another point is the find spot that is very inaccurate, because what is reported by the Jardin and the short reports is that it was found in Drab el Naga. So any of you that is familiar with the Theban topography knows that Drab el Naga is quite big, is quite large. So it's a strip of land that goes from the Asasif, so from the area of Deir el-Bahri to the road to the Valley of the Kings. Fortunately, thanks to Luigi Vassalli, we can a little bit narrow down this for this find spot, because in his drawing album, there is a drawing album kept in Milan, in the library of Milan. He writes that he marked on the spot that he found the tomb of Hornacht and other tombs of the Second Intermediate Period. Here you can see some drawings. And he said that this has been found close to TT 155 and the find spot of Ahhotep. So most presumably, the find spot of Ahhotep is close to TT 155, that we know where is located 155. And this also matched quite well with information that Carter was able to gather in Thebes, because Ahmed Said el-Haj, he said that there was the coffin of Ahhotep was found deep below a tomb of a certain Antef that has the title of the Great Herald of the King, dating to the reign of Thutmose III. Is a little bit earlier, 155, but we know the spot. Now is very well known, it's Titi tomb. So we know where, more or less, in Drab el Naga, it should be found, this tomb, this coffin of Ahhotep. And then we have another question, I think, about this, another little enigma. So this coffin has been claimed by Monnier, by the letter of Monnier, to be intact. So most of the time in Egyptological literature, you will find that this is an intact discovery, an intact tomb, an intact burial. But exactly what do we mean with intact? So the two questions are, let's tackle the first. Is intact after the 1859? So it means that what they have been found is what is now preserved in Cairo Museum, and then intact before it was discovered. So this is how the ancient Egyptian really buried Queen Ahhotep. Let's start with the first. So basically, there is a lapse of information from the moment of the discovery, which is 14th of February or 15th of February, according to the sources, and the 25th of February, in which we don't have any information about the coffins. The only information that we have is the description of Maspero, which is a later version, is of 1883, and also presumably, it has also a little bit a touch of Orientalism, because you can see that there is the Mudir of Qena. He opened in his harem. He also violated the mummy. So it's a little bit on one side. And also he stated that all the objects, precious, they have been robbed by the Mudir of Qena. But actually, thanks to these letters that have been found, the Fadil Pasha, the governor of Qena, it doesn't look like, probably could have been a bad or good man. We don't judge now, but he followed the procedure. He didn't open like by himself, but he followed procedure, because this list, it looks like really the opening, the official opening of an antiquity, of a coffin box. Because actually this is addressed to the Maye of Saniye, so it's addressed to the Pasha, it's addressed to Cairo, and it reports very shortly all the list of objects that have been found in this coffin. So presumably this looks like an official recording of the opening, of the first opening of the coffin. And then it's not easy to identify all the objects that are inside, because as you can see, it was in the mid of 19th century, and sometimes they use a weird word, or sometimes they are very superficial, because they say golden bracelets of the other time. What is the other time? The other type. What is the other type? Sometimes they say a small bayonet, so you can guess what it is. The golden mirror, we know what it is. But some other times it's really difficult to try to trace which object is which. And mostly they were interested in the metal, if they were in gold or in other material, and in the number. You can see there are all the numbers listed. Well, what I did, I actually compared this list with the Journal d'Entrée, and basically almost all correspond. Here, I suppose you can't see much from this slide, but if in the publication has been already published, you can check, and approximately the number of bracelets is the same. Even the different type of dimensions, they correspond. When they say the other time, I suppose is another type of dimension. So it should fit. They quite correspond. There is only two objects that are missing. One is a golden bead, which should be, it's quite heavy. I don't know if they are wrong or if I made any calculation wrong, because they said it's 112 dirham, which should be 3 kilos. I don't know what this can be. This it looks more Mexican golden ball, but actually now I couldn't find in the Cairo Museum, and I couldn't find even in the Journal d'Entrée. But actually this was probably there, because there is Desjardins that he said that amongst the burial equipment of Queen Ahhotep, they could reconstruct the three-dimensional rendering of the prenomen of Ahmose, which is Neb Pechtira, because he said there is a golden bead like a sun, like the sign Ra, which could be this bead. Then he said there was a basket like the Neb sign, and then he said there are twice the figure of the lion, which makes the dual, so Neb Pech Tira, which are the two paws of the lion. This is a bit of fantasy of Desjardins. They like to play with hieroglyphs at that time, but what I am convinced that probably the ball bead of gold existed at one time, but didn't enter the Cairo Museum. It went lost somewhere. And then also there are doubts about 3 figurines in solid gold that were mentioned in the list of 25th of February. I immediately, thanks also to the help of Patricia Rigault of the Louvre, I was thinking to the 2 figurines of representing set figure, which are in the Louvre, and they are all of solid gold, and on the back of one of these there is inscribed with the name Ahhotep. So I thought maybe these are the figurines that were stolen, they entered the Louvre Museum. I might be wrong, because actually if you see in the Catalogue General, they mention 3 golden figurines that are in the boat, and they really, even Mariette himself, he distinguished 3 different peoples in the boat, in the miniature of the boat rower. So most probably it's these 3 figures that this list of 25th of February is pointing out. But anyway, I think that there is nothing missing. Basically, this is what has been found in the coffin. I don't think that none of the objects has been stolen, has been opened with the unofficial procedure. And then there is the second question: is the treasure intact before its discovery? And even this, we don't have, you can read in the Egyptological literature, there's been a lot of hypotheses, a lot of questions, a lot of ideas, but we don't have any evidence to draw any conclusion. Mariette, and we don't know how and from where, which is the source for this, he actually gives also the position of some of the objects inside the coffin, because he say some they were found at the bottom of the coffin, some other they were amongst the bandage, and some other they were directly on the flesh, directly on the skin of the queen. Unfortunately, the body has been destroyed by whoever found this coffin. And I asked Aid to check, especially if on the objects we could find some traces of some remains of bandages, of flesh, but the objects have been so restored and Aid couldn't find any trace for this. And we also checked inside the coffin. Unfortunately, the lower part of the coffin has been lost for the moment. I hope still find in the basement of Cairo. But on the back of the lid, we also tried to see if there were at least some bumps or some information. The only things we could find here and there, some traces of bandages next to the resin. The coat of the coffin. They were not inscribed, so there is no Book of the Dead yet, or I suppose to be the Book of the Dead, but we didn't find any information, any inscription of the little fragments preserved. But actually we can get some idea, because the Inventaire de Boulac or the Journal d'Entrée, they provide a sort of digging diary. They are, in this case, they are more than just a catalog register, but they are more a digging there. They added also some little information. And for instance, at the bottom of the list, at the end of the list of the Ahhotep treasure in the Inventaire de Boulac, there is this little note. That is, all the objects catalogued from 46 to 47, 25, they have been found inside the coffin of the Queen Ahhotep. All the others, and now we'll see, the others are the coal jar, quite weirdly, it was being found outside of the coffin, the calcite jars, the four jars that I shown at the beginning, a wooden box, and the wooden headdress, they've been found outside of the coffin. 2 of them is quite astonishing, because a headdress I would expect inside the coffin. And there's also the antimony jar for the second intermediate period inside the coffin. Somebody corrected, in English this time, and it's written, surely 4731 the box in the coffin. So there were also some information going on and off. But I think that we have some evidence to suggest that these objects were really not found inside the coffin. Because there is Théodule de Verriat, we already discussed about him. He was the copyist and the photographer of Mariette. And in the Musée d'Orsay, there are the negative of this. He took this coffin. He took actually on the Nile. There was a sort of pirate attack to the boats bringing these objects to Cairo. He took this object. He arrived to Boulak and he asked, most probably just outside of Boulak, outside of this house, of this magazine, to De Verriat to take the first picture of the object. And these are the first pictures of the objects. You see, this is the details that let me believe that this is the Embarcadero, is where the Embarcadero of Boulak, because this is a picture of Boulak, of the storerooms of Boulak. And while usually De Verriat took all the objects outside of the that were inside the coffin, they took separately from the coffin, he decided only for these objects to take the picture together with the coffin itself. Maybe it was a sort of a visual aid for an archaeological context. So probably Mariette knew from the one that discovered that all these objects were found outside of the coffin. We don't know, but definitely we know, at least, even if most of these objects, including the headrest and the wooden box, they are lost, at least we have a photographic picture of them. So let's see if it was an intact group before 1859. Most of the scholars, they believe that this was not an original group, that was not the primary deposition. It means it was something reassembled, gathered, a sort of cache, like the one that we have in TT 320, the cache of Deir el-Bahri. And one of the two reasons for stating that this is an intact group is because there is the absence of material of more modest value, there is no pottery, no resin, no basketry, no linen, there are all precious objects. And also because all the inscribed objects found inside the coffin, they lack the name of Ahhotep. For most of the scholars, this is enough to say this was not a primary burial. And probably they can be even right, because actually it's really look like only a selection or all the variable objects. Some of the scholars even suggested that Mariette asked people to gather objects here and there to assemble a fake assemblage, a fake burial equipment. Indeed, if you compare with some objects from another similar burial found by Flinders Petrie in Gurna, the so-called Kurna Queen, found that is now in Edinburgh, you can see that here you found pottery, basketry, you found faience, you found even material of more modest value. If you see, this is the quantity of objects in precious material. And you can see this is the only modest material from Ahhotep burial. On the top there is Ahhotep burial, is the calcite, is the alabaster. This is the only, let's say, more modest material. All the rest is gold, silver, copper alloy, which means bronze most probably, semi-precious stones, wood that in most of the cases Lebanon. So it's all precious. But I really wonder how many in the 19th century, how many of the modest material that were really collected by Mariette or by other people, they were really interested in pottery like was Petrie almost 1 century after. So we don't need to be, this I don't think that is a decisive argument. And it's the same when you compare all the, you can see this is the names of the kings found on the object of Queen Ahhotep, and the only one that bears the name of Ahhotep is the coffin itself. All the rest is either Kamose, the king Kamose, or the king Amose. And they said, why there is no object of Ahhotep? Clearly, is there a burial? This is not her burial. But if you see the other burials of the time, for instance, if you see the king Kamose, he was buried with the bracelet inscribed for the king Amose. And for a long time, this coffin was believed to be the coffin of King Ahmose, while only after 50 years there was Daresi who was the only one who said, let me see what is written on the bottom of the coffin, and he found that this was not the coffin of Ahmose, but was the coffin of Kamose, although there was the bracelet naming another king. It's not the only case. Maybe is even more famous is the coffin of King Nubkepera-Intef in the British Museum. On the top of this, according to Datanasi, who sold to the British Museum, was found the heart scarab of King Sobek and Saf, which is quite astonishing. I mean, the heart scarab should be on the heart of the king himself. And I can continue, even in the private dimension in this period, you find objects described for other people. There is from the Asasif, there is the coffin of Reri, the lady of the house. Again, if the coffin was not inscribed, inside the coffin we would have found only a scarab naming a person called Ahhotep, not the queen, evidently. At the time they were called all Ahhotep. And the razor with the name Sobeknacht, but there was no name of Reri inside the coffin himself. Another reason why people believe that this was a reburial or was a cache is also the type of structure. Because they say that you can see these are the two reports that are also not concordant between them. They also state something different. Because Mariette, he said that the coffin of Ahhotep was found only 1 meter, a few centimeters below the ground. So it really doesn't look like a tomb. And even Desjardins, which changed a little bit the version of Mariette, he said that it was found in a shaft from 5 to 6 meters. So it's still a little bit different from below the ground, but it's something that is not canonic, it's not standard burial. So this is a shallow hole, and this is a shallow pit, 5-6 meters from the surface. Anyway, both of them, they are quite in agreement that it was not a standard structure. This, when you read, and sometimes you say the burial chamber, there was no chamber, definitely. It seems that, at least apparently, there was no chamber. But what is the location? What type of deposit they found in 1849? So it was a cache, it was a surface burial. If we give a look to other burials of the period, for instance, the King Kamose, even the King Kamose was discovered exactly in the same way of Ahhotep, because he was buried a short depth from the surface, again like a shallow hole from the surface. Can be a coincidence or can be all reburials. Even two other kings of the 17th dynasty, Intef Mahat and Intef Eruhir Mahat, both coffins are in the Louvre now. And even for them, if you read the reports of the early 19th century, they seem to be found in the rubbish just below the surface, even them. So maybe it's a trajectory or maybe something. I can tell my idea. Now I want to state the evidence. Definitely, I think that's one evidence that we can exclude, because most of the scholars, they say, but these are the reburials, the cache of the, at the end of 20th dynasty, as they did with the cache of Deir el-Bakri, or as they did with other cachettes in Egypt, when there were a lot of robberies in the Theban necropolis, they need to save the mummies and their equipment. I don't think it's the case. For one evidence, if you see, for instance, this is coffin of a king of 17th dynasty, King Sekenen Ratao, and you can see that he is also contemporary to Ahhotep. He has been found in the cache TT 320, and you can see that all the coffin was without gold. There was not a single inch of golden foil, apart from the vulture and the inscription in the middle of the coffin. Basically, the priests, they have scratched out all the golden foil apart from the holy place, and they also repainted in yellow. So there is an assumption that the only time when the coffin could have been closed without all the valuable objects being stolen. If you see how many objects Ahhotep includes, it's quite astonishing. So I don't think that if there was not a sensorial link, everyone would have taken this treasure. So the only moment that this has been buried is when close to the death of the queen, because otherwise this treasure would have gone. So I think that the burial should have happened quite close to the time of death of Ahhotep. Even if it's a reburial, because most probably can be a reburial. And I can see there is a combaranda that I already mentioned you, is the Kurna queen. This has been found intact in the 17th dynasty. It was pity to discover this equipment. Also here, you can't see all the golden, because also on the other side also has been found with the collars, bracelet with a lot of gold, this coffin. And it's the same time approximately of Ahhotep. But in this case, we have an archaeological report, and we have photographs, and we have sketch, we have drawings. And Petrie reported that this coffin, that I suppose is a primary deposition, was buried in an open shallow trench in the rock. You see, exactly like Ahhotep. And you see that from here we have a picture. He took a picture as it was discovered, and he made also a drawing. And it's not only the only one. Also said there are some other burials of the Second Intermediate period and the early 18th dynasty that doesn't belong to royal individuals that show a similar non-normative attitude, just deposited below the surface, not in a proper burial. I just took the example of the coffin of Armos, excavated by the Metropolitan Museum, and they were found under two tumuli of limestone below the TT71 of Senemut, the chapel of Senemut at Shegab el-Kurna. So, and if you can see that all the contents of Queen Ahhotep, they are typical and consistent of a burial of this period. So there is a coffin, is an object made for afterlife. There is object to be worn for the protection of the body. There is the body care, the cosmetic, the leisure object that at that time they start to appear in the burials. Items for authority or military power. The motive of transport, like the boat, and the furniture. And in addition, all the objects in this burial, they seem made with a similar technique, not all, but several of them, and the same workshop. This is just the preliminary results. We are still working on this. It's just, we worked last year with Aid on the technique of manufacture of these objects. So, just as working hypothesis, please don't take this hypothesis seriously. But I wonder if the members of the royal family of the 17th dynasty, they selected on purpose hidden and burial spots without having a proper chamber, without being with the big superstructure, but just hidden in the ground of the hills of Drab el Naga, of Thebes. And this is also maybe one of the reasons, because are one of the few that have been preserved today. We have a lot of golden of the 17th dynasty. It's just an hypothesis. Maybe they need an extreme secrecy in a period of instability. Don't remember that even Thutmose I, he wanted, when he built the Valley of the Kings, he wanted a hidden place where no one can see, no one can hear. So then he became super famous and super popular. But then probably it was on the same line to build something that could be more hidden than rock-cut tombs. And then the last point that doesn't have any answer, so be prepared. So it's who was the Queen Ahhotep? Basically, from the object that has been found in this coffin, you can see that it belongs to a very precise range of time. Is between the end of the 17th dynasty and the beginning of the 18th dynasty, and is a period where Egypt, so it's on the absolute chronology, it ranged between 1550 to 1525 approximately. And you can see this is a phase of restoration of political unity of Egypt. So there is a moment of the defeat of Hyksos. There are the Theban rulers, they took the power, they make a lot of propaganda, and they say we need to remove the invasors, and they kicked out the Hyksos. So this is a very delicate phase, because this decided the destiny of Egypt, who would rule again over Egypt. And most of the people, there is an important queen called Ahhotep that has been mentioned in a stela set up by King Ahmose, that is the stela 34001, found in the 7th pylon of the temple of Karnak. There is this Queen Ahhotep that is mentioned, and you can see here she's the lady of the land, because she's the queen of Egypt, probably in a moment of vacancy of royal power. She's the mistress of Ahhotep, probably is a region north of Egypt, tied also to Aegean, most probably. And if you can see on some objects of the Queen Ahhotep, there are some Aegean motifs like the griffin and other images. They also need to protect the soldiers, the benefits, we don't know exactly what there are, the benefit of the noble. So still she's holding the power, even probably the military power. And the flies are probably an indication of military power. There are the flies that are connected maybe with Nubian mercenary or fightings. And then she's mentioned, the last point is important, because she's the mother of Ahmose. And this is so many scholars, they said, okay, then if she's the mother of Ahmose, is the same queen of Drabuelnaga, because she has a lot of objects of Ahmose. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the title of the coffin don't match with these figures, because on the coffin, she doesn't have any title of king's mother, and she doesn't have any title of king's daughter. So she's great wife, she's associated with the white crown bearer, but she's not linked with Ahmose. She can't be the mother of Ahmose. And then Egyptologists, they try to make all the reconstruction. She made her coffin before dying. I think it's a bit the lectio difficilior, but then it's up to you to play around. In addition, there is another problem. There is another coffin of a queen called Ahhotep. It's the coffin found from the cache 320, from the cache of Derebari. And this coffin, she has the king's mother and king's daughter title. Probably this is the Ahhotep of the stela. This is the one holding the power. And also, this type of coffin, it matched very well with the other coffins of the queens of the early 18th dynasty. Probably this queen, mother of Ahmose, should have died in the early 18th dynasty. While, if you can see, the two types of coffins are quite different. This is the coffin from Drabuelnaga. It's more archaic. So I really don't think that this queen can be the mother of Ahmose. But there is a mystery. Because in the coffin of Ahhotep from the cache of Derebari, there is no mummy. They didn't find the mummy inside, it was empty. And then the archaeologists start to fantasize that probably this was inside the other one. And then they start to measure everything, it doesn't fit. So they are two different queens. Ahhotep was quite a popular name at that time, so probably they are really two different queens. I leave you to read, there is an article of Marilina Betreau, who is my professor in Pisa, and she tried to puzzle with the identity of Ahhotep. So, in conclusion, I want to say that what happened to the history of Ahhotep, and this is the first step of research, then maybe next year I can update what came from the objects. There has been a sort of chain of oral communication. No? You know, when you are a child and you play each other, you say something in the ear of someone, and every time that it changes, it turns into be something completely different. I think that this happened. At one point, they start to create a story of Mariette discovering this coffin, of Fadil Pasha stealing all the objects. It happens because when passing the information from one point to another and not being complete, it starts to become legend. Even the Ahhotep himself, it's become legend. And what we want to do with our project is to rewrite the history in a different way, to create where we have the evidence we can state, where we don't have the evidence. I don't think that we need to build a new hypothesis to confuse scholars. This is why I said we have few evidence, you can build with this. Then when new pieces of archaeological information or information from the objects, we try to extract now information from the objects we can fill the holes. But till that moment, I prefer not to build another legend. And so this is why I said, sorry if I deconstructed all the history of Ahhotep, but that's all. So thank you very much to everyone. And I want especially to thank all the people here that they help with this job, that it's kind of side project for the University of Pisa, but it became bigger and bigger. So this is the team member and this is all the people to thank. And thank you to you for listening today.
Thank you, Gianluca, for this investigation. It was very exciting. Are there some questions in the assistant? A lot? Not yet. Well, there is something. So is it quite common, apparently, that in the early New Kingdom, coffins are buried directly under the ground? Because this reminds me what we saw in Abydos last year. We had 20 coffins of the early 18th dynasty, and all directly buried in the sand. I mean, they're not royal, of course, but it seems to be quite common at that time, apparently.
I have no idea. I mean, I think all the time archaeologists say, this is a cache, but maybe sometimes cannot be a cache, can be a primary deposition, but this is just a working hypothesis. This is my fantasy, so I don't want that you take for granted. But I see there is more than one case where they were really buried just under the surface. Maybe it was a method at that time to let the burial to survive, or even maybe they made the reburial soon after, because if they would have done after centuries, all the golden objects would have disappeared in a second.
Hello, thank you for the informative lecture. I have a question because now I feel I'm confusing. You presented two coffins, one of them for Ahhotep, and the other one, yes, this is the confusion come from. Now I think that we have two ladies, if I'm not mistaken, two ladies. One of them is Ahhotep, and which is related to Camus and Ahmosi, and the other one, unknown lady, which is the Mot Nusut, or the mother of the king. So now we have two ladies. One of them is unidentified, and the other one is Ahhotep, and they have the same name. And so yeah. I'm confused.
Ask Egyptian. They should not have called all the same names. I think that what is my opinion, but this is my opinion, is that she comes before this other lady, but most probably they died in the same time. Most probably, this is the only explanation. That probably she was the grandmother of Ahmose, and she was the mother of Ahmose. They had the same name. It's normal at that time. It's just an hypothesis, but then all the scholars, they start to create a lot of hypotheses, one on the top of the other, because actually it's very tempting to see this as the owner of the stela of Cairo, that is the mother of Ahmose, because she has a lot of objects with Ahmose. But it can be, there is only one mother. Fathers, we are not sure, but mother, there is only one mother, so this cannot be the mother of Ahmose. This is for sure.
Okay, thank you.
thank you for your presentation. As Simon said, it was a fascinating investigation. And I also had a question. So if you talked about the style of the coffin on the left, and it is, if I understood well, similar to Ahmed Nefertari, for example. And our coffin, stylistically, was it associated with the other 17th dynasty coffins, and which ones?
I think that the easiest one is this one, is second Ratau. It looks quite similar to me, so it can be even the wife of second Ratau. There is also another king that recently has been popped up, is Senaktenra Hamose, so it's maybe can be the wife of this king. I think that the coffin belongs more to the 17th dynasty style than to the early 18th dynasty style.
And do we know other coffins with this lock of hair like that?
Yeah, we know. This is the coffin of Ahhotep is a Rishi style. It means it's a feather. It has a feathers. Here you can see better the feathers of the bird. It's all in gold, but they are all feathers like this, exactly. You see also here there are feathers. You can see very well because it's all in gold, and it's called Rishi style. So this is typical of the late 17th dynasty and early 18th dynasty, till Thutmose I.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very interesting presentation. I like how you presented the whole topic, so thank you for this. And I have a question regarding the findings of the tomb. I'm not very much an expert in the findings of the 17th dynasty, I have to admit, but I'm just asking whether these findings can actually help you, like the team, in identifying the identity of this Queen Ahhotep, because as I noticed, there's some kind of pectoral that shows the purification of a king. So can it actually tell us something about this? If you can bring back the slides, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I see it's actually like the purification of Horus, maybe, on the left-hand side.
Sorry, I go this way because it doesn't work the other way.
It's, yes, this one.
Yeah.
Can it actually tell us something about this? Oh yeah, it is. It's okay.
But there is one problem, that we don't have parallels for this period. This is unique also because it's the only treasure that we found for for this period. So it doesn't give really the identity of the queen, but maybe this is why we are trying to analyze this object. We can give some little piece of a puzzle. There is a puzzle, it can give a piece. For instance, we want to know what has to do with the Aegean, why this is related to the Aegean, why there are Aegean motifs. And through the analysis, we can understand from where the gold comes, from where the metal is, which technique has been used, if it's any technique coming from the Near East, or even from the Nubia. So because also this period is a period where there are some Nubian influence quite heavily, especially with the Gurna queen, this has been probably Nubian queen. So this is how we can fill the gaps. For history is lost, most of the part. So we never need to aim for get answer. We need to get a partial answer. We need to be happy. It's already enough to get this. But this is also part of Aid's work, so I hope now we have a meeting with him, I hope from the analysis we can gather little pieces here and there to better define the profile, rather than the identity, let's say the profile.
Yes, yes.
The profile of the queen, maybe we can get something. Or even of the people working for the queen, because we want to see where this has been produced. A very powerful city where you can gather all the people working gold, because it's not easy to work gold, or they gather from somewhere else. It's quite important to answer these questions.
Yeah, thank you.
thanks for this excellent investigation. It shows that you must not always believe what you hear. It's very good.
Not even me.
Yeah. I wish you good luck for the continuation. And for the Rishi type, it's true that it is within a period of time, we know. But as far as I know, the types, the style, has never been studied. So it's a good encouragement now to have a closer look at all the Rishi coffins we know, not only the ones with gold and have more nuanced typology than what you presented. I'm sure there is a way to date precisely, at least in a chronology. Yeah.
Yes.
Bien. Thanks a lot, Gianluca, and we can
Thank
talk
you to you.
more in private more later.
And I want to thank also Sabah, because I see her here. It's also thanks to her, because when I proposed the project to Sabah, she was super enthusiastic about this, and she saw the potentiality for this. So I wish really to thank her and all the staff of the museum in Cairo, because they helped quite a lot to carry on this project.